As always, the views you'll be hearing during today's programs are those of the speakers, not of Stratford. The speakers' companies, firms, or clients and are not intended to provide legal or tax advice. We have gathered a panel to explore the exponential growth of artificial intelligence, AI, and its application in tax and accounting firms. Our panel of technology experts will guide practitioners through practical applications of AI and chatgpt and explain how its growth will impact the profession in the future. Our panel today includes Dr. Mfon Akpan, Assistant Professor of Accounting at Methodist University. He is also joined today by Dr. Scott Dell, Assistant Professor of Accounting at Francis Marion University. Speakers, when you're ready, we'll get started.
We are ready. Greetings and welcome. Hope you're all doing well. Excited to be here to join you and to give you an idea of some insights into ChatGPT. We'll be surveying momentarily to get an idea of how much you know so we can gauge our presentation to your content. But we'll start out with a little political humor, and this is as political as we're going to get, but it's talking about factually incorrect information from things like ChatGPT. You might have heard the term hallucinations, which we will emphasize throughout. And out of the mouths of the babes, do politicians have artificial intelligence? Again, that's as political as we're going to go today, but we are emphasizing, and this kind of cartoon says, it's not always accurate when ChatGPT will report things, record things, and tell you things. So when you have clients telling you, saying, I saw it on ChatGPT, I asked it, it told me, it may be wrong. So we're starting out with tax and accounting using ChatGPT, getting a flavor. I'm Dr. Scott Dell, and I'm joined by Dr. Mfon Akpan, and we both are geared towards understanding this stuff and translating it into English for you. So I'm going to probably start the presentation, and then we'll tag team it and go back and forth a little bit. As far as I will bring your attention to this slide, you have full access to all of these slides. So you don't have to take notes like a mad dog and go crazy trying to write all this stuff down. But if you go to the tinyurl.com/Stratford chatgpt, you will have access to this. And if you take a picture, this picture will get you there as well. So you have a QR code that will allow you to see what's going on and have access. As I said, I'll start out talking about some things, and you think I might have started out with a negative about hallucinations. Well, this is kind of a positive, actually. The CEO and co-founder, Sam Altman of OpenAI, which developed ChatGPT and GPT-4, which Microsoft bought half of for about $10 billion, and they were actually part of the startup. Microsoft kicked in about $1 billion out of the gate, too. So they've been actively involved from the start. But one of the quotes of Sam Altman is, it's slow, it's buggy, it doesn't do a lot of things very well, but neither did the very earliest computers. And this is talking about the latest and greatest, the GPT-4 version, the one you get to pay for if you want to take and have access to it. So it has its limitations. AI, we'll get into the background of AI. We're going to talk about tax use. We're going to look at the agenda. And here we go, just to see where we're headed. We're going to start by talking about what we know. We'll introduce the presenters, Mfon and myself. We'll go ahead and you'll see the proper notation, ChatGPT 3.5 versus GPT-4. It's not ChatGPT-4. GPT-3.5, every one of you has access to for free. GPT-4 is the one you pay $20 a month for. And if you use it more than 3 times a week, it is well worth the investment, in my opinion. We'll talk more about why you might want it or might not want it. Any Star Trek fans in the crowd? Resistance is futile. It's here. It's happening. It's out there. It is growing. It is snowballing. It's accelerating. We'll talk about prompt engineering and the importance of prompt engineering and how you design these prompts or these questions that you ask when you're communicating with this powerful tool. And then we're going to go directly into the tax and accounting arena. I mean, you can ask it Excel questions. You can ask it Python questions. You can ask it internal revenue code questions. The warning you will hear is this does not go past September 2021. So if you want the current IRC, not happening. Although there are ways around that we'll talk about too through APIs. We'll talk about data security and privacy and considerations and ethical considerations. And then we will jump to a live demo so you can see it in action. We'll survey momentarily. Quotes, those who are great at AI and everybody else. Those are the two types of companies. If you have a tax practice, if you have an accounting practice, if you are in private accounting, if you are in a company as a controller or CFO or any other role, you're going to be using this stuff. Your colleagues will be using this stuff. Your customers and clients will be using this stuff. So yes, you do need to understand it. And Mark Cuban, I guess a billionaire, has some insights on that. So well worth a hear, a look, a see. I'm going to go ahead and let Mfon introduce himself, some background. Go for it.
Yes, and I'm Dr. Imfan Akpan, as Scott mentioned, assistant professor of accounting at Methodist University in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I wanted to also point out these images are enhanced and generated with AI. So when you see that little line that says DALL-E 2 and Midjourney, those are the platforms we use to make these images.
Great point. Yes, almost all the images you see, except for some of the graphs and charts, very much are oriented towards that. And we'll go back. Dr. Scott Dell, officially a doctor as of 2019, a Navy vet, full-time academic for 15 years now, have been entrepreneurial. I do maintain CPA licenses in South Carolina and in Wisconsin. But I do want to bring your attention to something called Coliseum. And there are actually four URLs here. As I say, you'll have access to this presentation. But of the four URLs, I typed in some information in English. And I'm going to introduce you to Richard. He is my assistant. Richard works 24/7, knows over 75 languages, and hasn't asked for a raise since I started working with him. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and jump over to a window that just shows you what Richard looks like. And although you will not be able to see, but this happens to be, I wrote it in English, but if you notice at the bottom, you'll see closed captioning in Spanish. Spanish is amazingly good. You'll find that it translates well. It's more Castilian, Spain Spanish. But I'm also going to go ahead and give you the same thing. And if we look at it, I'll go over to the Chinese version and give you an idea of what that kind of looks like. Because not only will it change the content of where that goes, let me see if I can get to where we need to go. And we'll go into the window and bear with me a moment. And to the Chinese version. What's pretty cool about this and very powerful about this is that when you look at it, you see that it also will directly translate and have access to. Okay, that's the English version and is what I typed in originally. But when you go in and you want to see any other languages, if you are translating into another environment, if you are going through and trying to impress a customer or a client, and you want to be able to access in their native tongue and make it so that they can clearly understand what you're working with and looking at. I'm going to go in here, and there we go. You'll notice as I play this, and again, you can't hear the sound, but automatically the characters in the background change. The characters in closed captioning change. This will give you a flavor of the power of some of these tools in artificial intelligence. And you'll find that the artificial intelligence abilities that you have is being able to go into these tools and doing more work for you. I would never normally do this on a presentation. So no one's being unemployed. I'm not displacing anybody. But I want to give you a flavor of the kind of power that's in here. By the way, I did write the book on LinkedIn, The Complete Guide to Succeeding with LinkedIn. I've been in technology for a long time. I worked for the Big Eight, or now what's now the Big Four, so I've got a lot of gray hair, you can tell. Additionally, the tools out there and the environments, I was a consultant for many years and have only been a full-time academic for 15. Mvon and I co-wrote an article, Journal of Accountancy. It is about clients and answering client questions. The link is here as well. You can read that at your leisure. But it basically has a chat GPT dialogue. It has a conversation that we work with and operate. And the Journal of Accountancy published it a couple months back. So we'll give you some insights. So let's talk about what we know. Let's talk about what ChatGPT is about and when it was released. If we're looking at ChatGPT, it's July. And you say, wait a minute, July, that's not a lot of months. 8 months, less than 8 months, we have taken revolutionary actions in artificial intelligence. But frankly, artificial intelligence has been around for over 60 years. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the origins and the background. 3.5 or ChatGPT 3.5 was released in March, on November 30th. And on March 14th came GPT-4. Now, Sam Altman has said GPT-5, no rush. And in technology, when you say no rush, you're not sure what to interpret, but it sounds like 2025 is going to be the target from what I'm hearing and the rumors I'm hearing. But what do we know? It's feared. A lot of people are saying it's going to take over the world, and Skyrim, Terminator Skyrim is going to take over, and we're going to be extraneous. Others love it. It's going to do amazing things. It's going to drop the price of energy to 10% of what it is today in the near future. It has a lot of horsepower. Everyone is using it, but it does hallucinate. It does make things up. So you got to be careful. Go ahead, Empon.
And I did want to add to that. So we are waiting for GPT-5, but in the meantime, GPT-4 has been updated. So there's been updates to it. The latest update we just saw was July 20th. Then before that, there was an update in May. So they've been consistently improving the software moving forward, but they haven't come out with a completely new version of the software.
And then Meta introduced Llama 2, new version within the past month. And Palm 2, which is our friends at Alphabet and Google, came out. There's a lot of tools out there, and they are being updated. They're not coming out with a 4.1 or 4.2, which is interesting, but you're so right. And that's a great comment that 4 is continuously being updated and maintained. And again, I will bring your attention to the word hallucinates. I mentioned that in the opening slide. I might mention it a couple more times. It does lie. It does make things up. It'll make up book names. It'll make up authors. I actually went in and I said, give me the names of the board members for the board of directors of a publicly traded company, Sunoco. All right. And it gave me a whole bunch of names, 8 names. Not one of them was a board member on Sunoco's board. So be careful when you look at this stuff. So a little more background. It was launched on November 30th, as we mentioned, in 5 days. That's 5 days, million users. Real quick. Amazingly well adapted. I was late to the game. I was part of the second week. I was probably day 8 or 9, but still, I was probably in the second million users. But now there's billions, so we're every day it's being used. Crazy opportunities and crazy activities. ChatGPT in 2 months had 100 million users. Now you might have heard that the folks over at Meta or at Facebook introduced their platform, which is to replace Twitter. They had 100 million users in 5 days. So this slide will get updated momentarily. But that was last week. They came out with traces, and 5 days had 100 million users. So they now take the prize, but they were an established company. And anybody who's Instagram has an easy in to their platform, their Twitter platform. But ChatGPT was an unknown, and to become an unknown to a known with 100 million users, pretty amazing stuff. So how about by the numbers? What's it look like? You can see the level of data. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, when you look at it, no, I was going to say when you look at the growth, you see when you started from GPT-2 all the way up to GPT-4, you've got 1 trillion parameters. And right now, we don't know where it is with the updates as it stands right now. But go ahead, Scott.
Okay. And I do have a question to ask, and I'm going to I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to ask in the Q&A if you could go ahead and indicate your level of knowledge and understanding of ChatGPT. So if you could go ahead and if you, in the chat, go ahead and put a 1 if you can spell it. Put a 2 if you've heard of it but not use it regularly. 3, few times. 4, a regular user. Or 5, a power user. So on a scale of 1 to 5, what's your comfort level and knowledge of using ChatGPT or GPT-4? Can spell it? Heard of it? Yeah, kind of used it. Regular user or power user.
We've got
So if you,
we've got a
yeah,
two. We've got a 1, 2, 3. I see a 4,
cool.
3. Okay.
Okay, so we got a wide range. It's kind of it seems like heavily weighted towards the 2s, maybe 3s. Is that the sense of it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so we'll do a good review. We're going to speed up the review process, but let's make sure we get a good, solid foundation for everybody here because understanding the technology is the first step to using it, and we have some basic understanding of how it's going to work. Yeah, you don't have to know how to repair the car to drive it, but you do know how the gears kind of have to work and how you have to put it in drive and you have to use the steering wheel and sometimes how to park. So we're going to get to the point where you are going to understand kind of how this technology works and why there are limitations and why you might want to use it and take advantage of it. So let's look at this GPT. It stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Okay, it's pre-trained. It's got a lot of data. And you can see from this slide, GPT-2 had about 40 gig of data. GPT-3 went to 570 gig, okay, half a terabyte. If you start looking at 3.5, which is a little slimmer, yep, it's a little bit less. 3.5 has less data, but that doesn't make it any worse. And then there's over 1 trillion parameters in GPT-4 on the March 14th release. We mentioned some other players here. You look at Meta, they have Llama. You look at Alphabet, they have Bard, which is based on Lambda. They have Amazon, which uses Lex, and Salesforce. And those are some tools that are actually pretty powerful that are integrated in. We're going to talk about Microsoft Office, which is going to be using something called Copilot. It's in beta right now. It's going to generate your emails. It's going to generate your spreadsheet graphs. It's going to do the analytics in your spreadsheets for you without pivot tables. You're going to tell it what you want. It'll do it. You'll communicate to it. It'll give it instructions. Right now, you can get Excel commands. I had to go in. I was doing an average on a column, and there were a bunch of blank cells. And you know what? I didn't want to factor those into zeros. And I take it back. I wanted to put those into zeros, but it disregarded them. I use ChatGPT to ask and say, how do I get, what's the Excel formula to include those cells without having to put zeros in all these other cells on a larger spreadsheet? You can ask all kinds of questions, use all kinds of tools, real powerful stuff. If you look at what this is all about, I mentioned 60 years before. So over 60 years ago, AI was introduced. And we didn't have the computer power that we have now. We didn't have the level of skill and knowledge that the current artificial intelligence has capabilities of back then. But it evolved. We have a timeline we'll show you in a moment. But it has evolved. It is a powerful environment. It is a powerful tool. But how does it work? It is a word predictor. People use the term artificial intelligence, but it's not intelligent. It doesn't think. We can't anthropomorphize artificial intelligence, say human characteristics, it's thinking. It's not thinking, it's algorithms. It's going in and saying, here is the words. I looked up based on those words. I got some other data I'll put up here, and I'll project what the next word is, and the next word is, and the next word is. And it keeps projecting. If you ever played a game of telephone when you were a kid, kind of whisper in somebody's ear, hey, here's the message. And then it goes down the line. Listen to this message. By the time the third person gets it, it's changed. By the time the 10th person has gotten it, it is no longer resembling what it started out as. And the same thing happens with ChatGPT. It is generating the next word. It's saying, oh, here's another word. Here's an 80 or 90% probability of the next word, which sometimes it can veer off course, like our game of telephone. Sometimes it's spot on. It has been trained in English language. It has been trained and reviewed, and we'll talk a minute how that's done. But the tool is amazingly good English, amazingly good content often, but it can also veer off and hallucinate. You'll remember that term if you haven't heard it more than 10 times already. So it simulates a conversation, is very human-like. And there's a term called generative AI, GAI, which is all we're talking, these chatbots, or generative AI, GAI. There's also a term AGI, artificial general intelligence. They're saying that's 25 to 50 years away, where the tool, and I'm going to anthropomorphize, the tool can think beyond what we think. It does more than we do. And that's the AGI stuff. But GAI, generative AI, this is all the categories of the Meta folks from Facebook, the Alphabet folks, our Google friends, and all these other tools fall under GAI, generative artificial intelligence. It uses something called an LLM, a large language model. And this is just a whole bunch of input. You saw that 50 gig, that 500 gig, the trillion sets of data. That's all the volume of the large language model it is drawing from the web. By the way, the web has its biases. We'll talk more about that. The web has its limitations and its orientations. So you want to be aware of those as we go. And we'll share more information. It uses something called natural language processing. It has over 100 languages, in which dominant one is English. As a matter of fact, I have a German colleague. What she does is, and she differentiates herself, she asks questions in English, gets the answers in English, and then translates it to German for her German colleagues. What happens if she started in German? She found that she can ask a question in German, she'll get an answer in German, but it won't be nearly as good as asking that same question in English, getting the answer in English, and translating it back to German. And this tool translates really well. As you saw, that Calician stuff out of the gate, pretty powerful stuff. They use RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback. What the heck does that mean? Well, it means this is 3.5. Why the English is so good? Because it actually said, hey, audience, and this is actually this is mainly in Africa that they were asking. I guess the wages a little less expensive there, but they give 4 or 5 alternatives saying, which one sounds better? And yep, the third one sounds the best. Great, that's the English I'm going to use. The second one sounds the best. That's the English I'm going to use. So this reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF, is human interaction, and lots of human interaction went into this to make the English so good. Okay. It is a fixed data set. Let me point out to you, September 2021. We mentioned earlier that it is a fixed set, and if you're going to get current Internal Revenue Code, current data, if you say, well, what's a good investment? Give me a good stock to buy. It'll give you a great stock to buy up to September 2021. The catch is it's not going to know anything about 2022 or 2023, except I'm going to hand it off to MFON. GPT-4 has some capabilities that are not in GPT 3.5.
Right, and I wanted to add where you can access ChatGPT. So you hear us, we're talking about the 3.5, the 4.0, but there's several places where you can access it. So when you think about 3.5, and you've heard us say free, if you go to the OpenAI website and you sign in, you can have access to 3.5 right away. There's no charge for that. If you sign up for the subscription, then you have access to the most advanced version of ChatGPT, which is GPT-4. You also get access to other features called APIs. So if you think about apps, so if you think about an app store on your phone, the 4.0, you have access to various apps where you can get online, you can access other features. Right now, I think there's about 500 different APIs or apps in the store right now, and it's constantly being updated and changing. Now that's on the OpenAI website, so you can access 3.5, 4.0. If you go to Microsoft, you have the Microsoft Edge browser, and you go to Bing, you can access ChatGPT on the web, and that's free as well. So, and that is, you have access to the 4.0 through, they call it Bing Chat. So you can do an enhanced search through Microsoft Bing with ChatGPT. So if you think about that, that's 3 ways to access it. There's one more, which you may not think, you may be wondering, and many of if you're on social media, you may already know about it, or maybe some of your kids or nieces and nephews know about this, but ChatGPT is also in Snapchat. So Snapchat introduced in all, if you have a Snapchat account and you open up your chat, you'll see you've got a new friend in your chat section called My AI, and that is ChatGPT. And you can actually have conversations with My AI. You can ask My AI for restaurant recommendations, um, to what movies to watch, and just like help with your homework as well. So you have it really in those four places. And when we talk about, we're emphasizing ChatGPT. It's one of the largest language models. They were really the first. You say they have the first mover advantage when they came out in November 30th of last year, and it's really mind blowing because it's been, like Scott was saying, less than 1 year, and they've developed this product. I mean, it's unbelievable. But there are also other models as well. So Google has Bard, where you can do an online search as well. There's other platforms, Cactus AI, where we had a chance to speak with the founders of that. So they're Anthropic. So there's many other language models, many other chat GPT type products that are also out there. But the reason we're focusing on chat GPT, this is go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, no, it's great to include the other products as well. And you mentioned our Alphabet cousins and colleagues that have the Google. You can, the same way you can access the Bing search engine from Microsoft, you can access Google search engine, and Google is integrating Bard into their Google search capabilities. They don't want to be left behind. They got kind of caught with their pants down when OpenAI released theirs, and now take the world by storm. And Bing is getting a big following very much because of this. And Microsoft was smart enough to invest $10 billion. The catch that now that Google has you able to access Bard directly through their search engine as well and integrate that. By the way, I do publish a newsletter called the Career Capsule. We'll talk about access later. My second to last issue, every issue has a chat GPT conversation or for OCOM, but the last one had a chat GPT 3.5, a GPT-4, and a Bard conversation that at the end of it, just so you can see some differences in how they operate. And I've been most impressed with GPT-4. 3.5 is great. Bard's pretty cool, but it hasn't reached the level, I don't think, for most things that I use it for as OpenAI has. It obviously doesn't have the following and the brand awareness that they have. And I'll mention one more thing on this slide before handing it back. This is a graphic representation of the data available in GPT-4. You say, why, Scott, you recommend GPT-4 if you're going to be a regular user. How come? This graphic says it all. That dot is to scale. The big blue or purple dot and the little purple dot. GPT-3 versus GPT-4, very much that level and that scale of data that it is based on in analyzing the large language model. GPT-4 feels a little slower. It's like a teletype when it's typing, where GPT-3.5 is instant. It'll pump out information real quickly. But I also want to bring the features of GPT-4 to your attention. Things that it will recognize are pictures, charts, tables. You have handwritten notes. It will look at those notes and say, okay, let me put it down in paragraph format or other. It'll read the text. 3.5 won't be able to read that stuff. A lot more capacity, 25,000 words versus 3,000. So you can put a longer document. You put a PDF file inside and say, hey, analyze this resume, analyze this document, and it'll give you analysis where you have a lot more capacity in 4. And now we'll talk about the APIs that you have, the additional applications that give you the advantage of being able to take advantage of some. This is a 4.0 feature, not a 3.5 feature with the plugins. Go for it.
Yes, so this is something you get access with the paid version or the ChatGPT 4. And when we talk about speed, you think about the output speed. So if you ask it a question, how fast it gives you that output. Between 3.5, and then 4 is a little bit slower, and And when we say slow, I mean, if you see it, it's still fast. It's seconds as far as the output. But one other thing with that, and what they've been working on, is precision. So as you see the various versions, they're working on increasing the precision. So that's one. Two, with the APIs, and they call them plugins. I give it akin to the App Store. So if you think about on your mobile phone, you've got your phone, but you can download various apps that allow you to connect and do different things. I say that's what the plugins or the APIs are. So and we're going to do a demonstration of it a little bit later, but there are APIs or plugins that allow you to upload PDFs. So you can upload a PDF document, and that document will be there, and you can have it to summarize parts of the document. Or there's what we use quite a bit. There's APIs that connect to research databases. There's also an API for Zillow. There's also an API for travel. So you can go and ask ChatGPT, I'm looking to buy a house in San Diego. Can you find me the cheapest house in this particular neighborhood? And it will connect through that plugin, and it would find you, it'll search for you and find that home for you. Or if you're looking to plan a trip, you can use a plugin. You say, can you find the lowest fare to go from Chicago to New York on a particular day? And it can do that for you as well. So it gives you more functionality. It's constantly updating. So there are newer and newer plugins. And that's another benefit with GPT-4. So when you think about, well, the value proposition between, let's say, Bard or the other products is that they have this plugin store where you can actually extend the capabilities of ChatGPT-4, which I think is great.
If you're planning a trip and you want the Expedia plugin, you can say, "What I like restaurants or I like museums. Give me a 5-day itinerary. Give me a plan. Give me a schedule. Give me a program, and then buy tickets for admission, or get me a plane ticket. Find the best deal." You're asking it to be your assistant to do the work for you.
Yeah. So it saves you time, and it can do a lot for you. And I think this is appropriate. We always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10 years. And we can change this around to, we always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 6 months and underestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years. And I think this is really appropriate when we think about the timeline and the impact with this ChatGPT and this particular technology, and how fast it's been developing. And you think about it, it's moving so fast. You may not, if you're not keeping up, you may not notice the changes that have occurred. We've worked on an article. You saw that in the Journal of Accountancy, and that was released recently. And to tell you, it's outdated. If you think about it, well, it's a very good article, but if you think about where the technology is today and how it's updated since we've written the article, it's dated, and that's how fast things are moving. And I think that gives us the other thing to think about is staying on top of the technology and really understanding where it is. There's a rule called the 10-10 rule. I don't know if you ever heard the 10-10 rule. And the 10-10 rule says it normally, this doesn't apply now, but normally it takes on average 10 years to develop a technology and 10 years to adopt the technology. So an example of this is, let's say, the color TV. So it takes 10 years to develop it, then 10 years for it to widely be adopted. So if you think about, so when we give this example, you think about today, ChatGPT was released less than 8 months ago, and 0.5 was released November 30th of 2022. Now we're on 4.0, and it has a plug-in store, an app store. It's a completely different product from where it was before. And this isn't even in 1 year. So if you think about the rapid speed and the way things are changing, I think it's amazing. So the 10-10 rule does not apply anymore. So when you look at the timeline of this, when you think about AI in general, you can go all the way back to the Enigma machine. So if you look back into the 40s, when you think about the decoder, the Enigma machine, this early AI, then we move to the Turing test, then we move farther into other forms of AI, and then you look at the founding of OpenAI. And from the founding of OpenAI, we have AlphaZero, and then we have ChatGPT 3, DALL-E, which is an image generator, which we use to make those images you've seen earlier. And then we've got we're getting closer to where we are now with the GPT 3.5 that was released in November 30th of last year. But if you notice, we went from the 40s, then we've got November 30th, 2022, and then we've got Google introducing Bard. Now we've got Bing Chat, and we've got other versions of 4.0, which in March 13th, that's great. We have ChatGPT 4. We also have other iterations of ChatGPT 4 that have also come out. Then, which isn't on here, as I mentioned before, you have GPT in Snapchat. We have the Bing Chat. So we have all, and we have the plugin store, the APIs. Not to mention all of the other large language models that have been released and have came out.
If I may interject, you were talking about speed. You might have heard of Moore's law. And Moore's law, chip capacity doubles and they cut price in half every year, every 2 years. There's a new law, AI is doubling every 6 months. That means quadrupling every year. Talk about exponential growth. This has been going on the past decade. It's Sevilla's law. And if anybody wants to get the details, there's a paper out on that. But Sevilla said doubling every 6 months, and it has been going on and continues. And I'll bring your attention to the Turing test. So you might have heard of ELIZA before. ELIZA was an interaction. It was on a mainframe computer. I was in Boston. It was at MIT way back when, in the 60s. And you'd ask a question. Hi, I'm having trouble today. And ELIZA would respond, what kind of trouble are you having? And you'd interact, oh, my relationships are challenged. Oh, and ELIZA would say, why are your relationships challenged? And you'd answer, yeah, my significant other, then we're not getting along. Oh, why is you're not getting along with your significant other? That is obviously not passing the Turing test, which will simulate saying, I'm having a conversation with a person. That's not a person, that's a computer. It's getting harder and harder to differentiate and understand and say, wait a minute, am I talking to a chatbot? Am I talking to a person? And this Turing test is a landmark of that, trying to determine how the fit is. So hand it back to you.
Yeah, and I was going to say with that point, I know it can be scary when you think about if things are moving at such a rapid pace, but it's also important to think about the technology. The platforms will be changing rapidly. Right now, we're talking about ChatGPT. Next year, we may be talking about a totally different model or platform. But what I think is important is to understand how they work and how you can use them. Scott also mentioned something, using it once a day, once a week, becoming familiar with it, that also helps as well as things are moving so rapidly. The other thing is it's and I'll tell you, we're into Chat GPT and AI, and we focus on this every day, but it's not possible for us to know all of the products, everything about it, and it's continuously changing. So it's important to get in to understand how it fits into your area and what you're working on, and build from there. I think that's one of the best things that you can do, and not to and to understand you're not the only one who may be feeling anxious about it as well.
I think now is time for CPE's question. Is that going to be administered by
Yes.
our?
Oh, there's a question in the chat as well.
Let's see. Oh, there was a question about can we demonstrate 3.5 versus 4? When we get to the live demo, we can do that. We'll see the speed and enhancement of that.
Yes, we'll take a look at that. And then there's another question. Can GPT help buy the ticket if we approve the best deal it finds?
Like the Expedia API, and the short answer is yes. It has that access and that ability.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
What I would say with the plugins or the API, think of it as I say it's an app store. I just try to give it the analogy. It's an app store, and it helps you. So it connects ChatGPT to that particular website, and then you can connect to it, and it'll give you access to that particular website. But yes, definitely it can. Because if you think about the GPT-4, it doesn't have direct GPT-4 on the OpenAI website does not have direct access online. Like Scott was saying, it has access to data up until, was it September of 2021? You need to use the plugin in order to access other data sets. If you access ChatGPT through Bing, you're on the internet, and it is a different experience in my opinion. You have access to ChatGPT-4 through the Bing chat, but if you're using it, it's a different. You'll do a search just like you would online, and it will come up with results, and it'll help guide you to further the search. So it's a little different. It's a different interface and a different experience. Same thing with the Snapchat, the social media version. Like Scott was saying, you would think you're talking to someone, because when you interact with the My AI in Snapchat, you say hello, it'll say, hello, how are you? How's your day going? You say, my day is going great. And it continues to keep asking you questions in a way to keep the conversation going. So they're different interfaces.
And that highlights one of the
But
differences between maybe a Google search and a ChatGPT query or conversation. I used to call ChatGPT Google on steroids. I've changed my definition because it's beyond Google. Google, you ask a question, it gives you a whole bunch of resources and you can do the research. ChatGPT is literally a chat. It's a dialogue. It surpasses the search engine capabilities by saying, well, let me ask a question. Give me 5 things about this. And then it remembers, it says, oh, on item number 3, elaborate. And then it'll elaborate. Can you change the tone of that and give me the other side of the argument? It'll change the tone. It's a dialogue. It is a flow. It is a chance for a conversation going far beyond your traditional search engine. So I have another survey question for you. In the Q&A, could you include either a U or a D for utopia or dystopia? What are your expectations? What are your fears? What are your thoughts? Are you fearing AI and generative AI, GAI, or are you hopeful? Do you think it's utopian? It's going to change the world for all the better and make things wonderful? Or do you think it's dystopia? Skyrim will take over and we won't have a say anymore. So please, in the Q&A, just go ahead and give a
Percent.
U or a D or another answer. How are we doing on the answers?
I like Lisa said, a mix of both. Time will tell. Utopia, don't know. Um,
Fair.
we did get another
What's your
question.
opinion? Go ahead.
No, what were you saying? You're asking my opinion?
Yeah, what's your thoughts? Utopia or dystopia?
I think utopia. Utopia. I
Good.
think that we. Uh, I was going to say I look at this time period, and I'm going to date myself a little bit. But if you think about the period where the internet, so we start using where people were saying, well, okay, you've got the internet, the web. We've had dial up and then, eventually broadband, but people were saying, you know what, I don't want to go online. I don't want to use the internet. And eventually everyone is using the internet. I think we're in that, it's that sort of, we're in that type of period or in that time with the technology. But the difference is that things are moving a lot faster than before. So I think things are moving a lot faster than before.
It is a speed thing. Yeah, I'm in the 90-10 camp. I'm 90% hopeful, but I have a healthy skepticism on the 10%, which is I think is good to have. You might have heard the 1,000 signatures, including Elon Musk, who said, "Put a pause, 6-month pause, hold off, wait, 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 wait." Unfortunately, I suspect Russia's not going to wait, South Korea's not going to wait, China's not going to wait. That was kind of a, and Elon Musk is coming out with his own AI platform, even though he was one of the original investors in OpenAI. He was an original supporter, but he has some
Mhm.
fears, and a lot of people do. So what about the fear?
Well, one thing, there was a question in the chat about security of data. So how about security of data if ChatGPT can access company and outside of the company? Would ChatGPT link to each other's companies?
Excellent
That I'm.
question. We're going to talk about
Mhm.
that, but I will say, and I'm going to give you a slide. If here's a future slide, I'll just push it out. Um, Samsung banned it on May 1st. Well, wait a minute, Samsung? That's a pretty big Korean company. Why would they ban their employees from using it? Why would Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Accenture ban their employees from using it? Why will school systems? Why will country? Italy banned ChatGPT for about a month until they restored access. There were security concerns. And the problem is, and there's ways around it. Let me give you a quick insight. So if you are in Samsung and you say, my strategy is this, can you comment and prepare a document or a blog post or an internal document? Well, that becomes public knowledge accessible to ChatGPT. I've got my financials. Let me pop those in there. Can you give me a financial analysis of my financial statements? And it will. That becomes public knowledge. Now you have ways in 4.0 to erase that so it doesn't get accessed. It'll keep it for 30 days, it'll erase it. But if you don't do anything special, anybody else, I can say, oh, tell me about Samsung's future strategy. I'm not at Samsung, but it's going to know that somebody typed in the strategy at Samsung, asked the question, got some response, fix this up grammatically, make it sound more professional. Whatever it is, that now has access unless you go through steps to do it. There are firewalls being put in place. You can have your own set of data internally, your own internal training, your own access, your own analysis, and it bars outside use. But you are correct. PII, personal identifiable information, you do not want to post. Social security numbers. You do not want to post any personal financial data. You do not want to post any personal information that goes with that. So be aware. Yep, you got to be careful. And security is a legitimate fear, a legitimate issue. As it says here, privacy, security, any other fears we have to worry about, Fun.
And when you were mentioning that, I just wanted to confirm. You're mentioning on the OpenAI website accessing ChatGPT. I couldn't say how that would work with the Bing chat or when you're using what information is shared when you're using it on social media, for example, with Snapchat.
Great comment. Great question to ask. The other side of it is biases. You're going to ask the questions and they're going to give you answers. It's going, my daughter is a nurse in Baltimore. Okay. It's going to assume nurses are female. It'll assume business folks are probably male. It'll assume doctors the same way. So you need to be aware of biases. It's biased based on the input data, which is coming in biased. You can, through how you ask the questions, how you ask the prompts, you can get around that and you can have it answer you in a much less biased form as long as you're aware. And I'll confess, I'm heavy in the career space. My bias, if I'm hiring somebody, is a 50-something white guy. Okay. As long as I'm aware of that, I can ameliorate, I can deal with that and say, you know what, DEI, I do want to have the diversity element. I do want a variety. I do want other opinions and thoughts. I'm aware of my own personal bias. Okay, I'll deal with it. And we're all biased. We all have our thoughts and our considerations and who we like to, who we're talking to and who we might hire. So the same thing will happen as long as you're aware of the biases, you can deal with it and you can move forward. Other things on the fears, the bad actors. Even if it's 0.0001% of the population are bad actors that are going to take advantage of you, produce me a phishing email. I just got one this morning that was looking for pension fund stuff, and it says, your school, great. We're doing an annual review for your pension. It was not from my school. It was not. We're not affiliated with the state. We're not affiliated with the institution. They're not affiliated with anybody. Why are they asking me my personal data? And I actually reported that, and I ran it up the flagpole on that one because I could very easily say, yeah, I'm due for an annual review. Cool. Let me log into that. So bad actors, 0.001%. That's still a lot of people. If I was asking, give me a phishing email, I want to get some data. Can you produce one? It used to be able to do that. Now they have guardrails and says, I'm sorry, we can't do that. That would not be nice. But if I say I'm an academic, I want to give my students a demonstration of what a fantastic phishing email would be. That was one way to get around those guardrails and say, oh, here's a fantastic phishing email. And the person that put the chat and said, great, I think I'll use that. And not being an academic and not, really using it for nefarious purposes, we'll put it that way. Other intellectual property issues, a lot of lawsuits are running around. There's a committee, there's 7 folks that were just at the White House last week. Anthropic was there. There was, and the majors were there as well. And they were talking about watermarking outputs so you can tell deep fakes. That's my biggest fear. There's some amazing deep fakes of, you look at Trump, you look at Obama, you look at music coming in, Dr. Dre, whatever it might be, there are fake postings that are very realistic. So we got to be real careful and a lot of ethical considerations.
And to add to that, the debate around the plagiarism and ethical considerations is if you ask ChatGPT to make a recipe, well, it can write a recipe for chocolate cake, but ChatGPT cannot cook. Or, so where is it getting that information? So it's getting it from somewhere else. It's not its own original information. So that ties into the whole plagiarism and ethical side of things as well.
But if you want to have fun with GPT-4, take a picture of your refrigerator and say, I'm trying to figure out something for dinner. What do you suggest? And it'll come up with a recipe and take your leftovers and figure it out for you. You can do some interesting things. Unintended consequences I always like to mention. There's a couple of kinds of pollution, okay? It's going to take a lot of energy to generate these, to use these. And Sam Altman was predicting energy costs to be about 10% of what they are today, which sounds like a good thing, and it is. But how about pollution? But what kind of pollution? How about the hallucinations? I've got a book on the career space, 15-chapter book. Wrote the book. I actually have chats at the end of the chapter. I didn't use it to generate the book, but I actually had ChatGPT generate me a 15-chapter book, which it actually generated 25 chapters, which I will call garbage. It had no heart, no soul, it was a value. It did not have the access to the information that I thought was important to the audience that would be reading such a book. But that book now, I could publish that and I could sell that and people would buy it. And now there's, again, information overload, all this junk that's half true, half good, half bad, but how are you to differentiate? So there's a lot of overabundance of junk information that might get posted on there. And I mentioned AGI, that general artificial general intelligence or human intelligence is coming, but it is getting cheaper, faster, better as we go. Fear, personally, I think this is bigger than the printing press. Although the printing press, they said people can print lies, and they do. Okay, people can print the Bible, and they do, and print books and communications, and they do, and advertising, and they do. This is bigger than printing press, bigger than the web. Even the calculator got a bum rap when it first came out. There were mathematicians and school teachers in Washington State that said, we're going to ban the calculator in our classrooms in high school, in that middle school, elementary school. Why were they banning it? Because they feared the calculator introduction is going to ruin math education. Well, it's going to actually be another tool in the toolbox. As an academic, I encourage use of Wikipedia, not as an authoritative source. You better verify whatever you read, because I can put lies on Wikipedia as you can. But is it the fear of everybody saying, if everybody has Wikipedia, there's our knowledge base. We don't need to teach anything anymore because people can just look it up. Not true. We need that critical thinking piece when we're doing this analysis. But there are a lot of tools out there, a lot of evolution, industrial evolution, third, fourth, now fifth, a lot of change. And even mobile phones, smartphones. People are saying, well, we got the smartphone, we don't need people anymore. Well, I'm afraid not. It doesn't work that way. Star Trek fans in the crowd? The Borg. Resistance is futile. Everybody's using it. But follow the numbers. These big companies are investing billions. Private investors and private capital, billions. The commitment, PwC, billions investing. KPMG, billions. They're going in and putting a lot of money into this stuff. Yeah, take notice. If they're going to put it in, others are going to use it. We're going to see more of it through our applications. If you're using Salesforce, if you're using different platforms, we'll talk about Microsoft Office Copilot, which is intriguing and amazing. And some people are going to say, I don't want to deal with it, I'm going to retire. Again, you can run, but you can't hide. All right. So what does artificial intelligence mean, and what are some of the limitations? Go for it.
Well, it hallucinates, and that is, I call it AI jargon for making things up. So many times you may put inputs. For example, Scott was mentioning he was asking ChatGPT a question or to do something. It may give you false information, or it may add information to the output that is not true, and it will make things up, or it will make up dates or give you fictitious names and information. That's called hallucination. Now, that's one of the big limitations, and that's one of the things that when you're using it, you need to understand that you can't just blindly trust the output or the information that you're receiving. So that's number one. Now, on the flip side, it passed the bar exam. It also passed a course, a Wharton business course. A professor gave it an exam, an MBA course. It passed the course. We talked about accounting exams, 46%. We did some research on that. It did not pass certain accounting exams. And really what it is, it does better on certain types of questions. And also there's ways, we call it prompting, that you input and you train it to answer the questions. It can help it to give you better output. We talked about the academic integrity and ethical considerations. Go ahead, Scott, you're going to say something.
Let me interject. The bar exam went from a 10th percentile to a 90th percentile, from 3.5 to 4. That 46% was based on 3.5, an exam I gave it in the middle of December When MFON ran it through 4, it got an 82%. So it's improving. It's getting better. There's a study out now. It can pass the CMA exam and the CPA exam. It went from flunking the CPA exam with 3.5 to passing the CPA exam with 4.0. So there are ways of doing it. So what's the hope all about?
Well, it does. It's already changed education as we know it. Especially being professors, when you think about, you've got something that can answer questions, it can solve problems. You know that students are going to use it, and it's readily available and free. So with that, we have to change the way that we are approaching our content, and working with students. The other thing is to think about, just like Scott was saying, you have companies investing in this. So if you think about it from an educator standpoint, you may say, well, okay, I want my students to learn. And many of us, we consider it cheating. We don't want them to rely on ChatGPT or chatbots to do all of their assignments. But at the same time, we want them to be able to use the technology and understand how it works, because businesses are using it and it's out there. So they need to be exposed to it. Go ahead.
Yeah, MFON and I just wrote a paper, and I do this in my exam. I give an exam, I give a question, I give a ChatGPT response, and I give 3 other alternatives. Why? Because they can get the ChatGPT response anyways. On average, when I was doing these, I did a couple of exams this way, it was about 51, 52% ChatGPT was correct. I told my students, you want to get 52% of the exam? ChatGPT, circle A, and they're all right. If I hope you want to do better, some of the other answers are better. So it was quite a random that it scored just above a 50% on a ChatGPT answer. Again, 4 would be a little better, but 3.5 is what I did. My students have access to it anyway. So it's changing and designing how we how we educate. MFON mentioned cheating or collaboration. When you're doing it in college, you call it cheating. When you graduate and you work in a team and in a group, it's now collaboration. The line is being blurred. So we need to be aware and think about that. We talked about human biases. I want to talk about vanilla responses here, though. I teach Sunday school, and I said, generate a sermon for a portion of the Torah and go through it and give me some information. And it actually wasn't half bad. It really didn't have heart, didn't have soul, limited authenticity, and chat AI does not have ethics or morality. It reflects the web. It reflects on the data. The garbage in, garbage out, or what I call garbage in, gospel out, because if it's printed nicely, it looks on a spreadsheet, it must be right. Not exactly, but very vanilla in its responses typically. Now it's very polite. You can say, by the way, you're wrong, and it'll be apologize. Oh, I'm so sorry, I got that wrong. Let me give you another answer. You can regenerate answers. You can do things and repeat things, but there's a lot of horsepower and things you can and can't do. It's amazing at summarizing. If you kind of have writer's block and you use a springboard, perfect. I mentioned over 100 languages capacity to translate. Be even better than Google Translate. Can read current URLs if you go through the APIs. And then resume reading, article reading. You can summarize a YouTube video. There's a 2-hour video. Okay, the Senate hearings that Sam Altman were speaking. I don't want to listen to 2 hours. Actually, I did listen to 2 hours. It was worth it. But maybe you don't want to listen to 2 hours of discussion by politicians, and you can condense it into 5 paragraphs. Use these APIs. It'll read a PDF. It'll look at a YouTube video. It'll access things. Checklists, surveys, ad copy, schedules, all kinds of tools built in, accessible to you, and can do. And it keeps improving. We talked about the date limitations when they were released. It's attracting a whole bunch of money. Let me talk about 2 job titles, prompt engineer and AI auditor. We talked about prompting, the way you query, the way you ask, the way you communicate directly with the AI chatbot. Prompt engineers can make over $300,000 a year. That was before November 30th. So yes, there were prompt engineers around before the actual release. So it's been around. AI auditor, fact checking, validation. We're in the accounting profession. Auditors, not everybody's true. We got to validate. So there are job opportunities, and jobs are evolving. Jobs are changing. and
and
things are improving.
and why would they? So I think one thing when we talk about prompt engineering, why are they paid so much, and why is that such a valuable skill? And you hear us mention that over and over again. The better the prompt, so the better you ask, let's chat GPT the question, the better the output. So the better you are at prompting and understanding what to ask it and how to ask it and how to teach it to answer the question, the better your results are. So that's why that's very important. So you can use platforms like ChatGPT more effectively. There's also, they call it zero shot, one shot, few shot prompting. And those are different levels of interaction with ChatGPT on training it and teaching it to answer the particular question you want it to answer by giving it examples. So you can feed it examples of certain types of questions or problems, give it certain scenarios, and ask it to give you output similar to that. So that's why when you hear us mentioning that, it's very important. The other thing is that ties into what Scott was saying earlier about using ChatGPT or becoming familiar with it. The more you use it, the more you get better at the skill of prompting and asking questions and getting better output. In other words, becoming more efficient with ChatGPT.
Okay, you want to talk about Deloitte's value propositions?
Yeah, so the big thing is efficiency. So cost reduction, you can automate tasks, accelerate results. You can reduce complexity. So you can be proactive and predictive. You can transform, so you've got transformed engagement and you've got human interaction. It also helps to fuel innovation, so new products, new features. It ties in. I would say the big through line with this is efficiency. So using products like ChatGPT can allow you to become more efficient. And if you think about it, if you're knowledgeable, it can give you superpowers. So if you understand a particular subject or area, so for example, tax, it can help you to become more efficient with the output.
Okay. As far as we're going to put in the chat in the Q&A access to this presentation. Some of you may not have seen the URL that we had, so we're going to add that to you. There's a tiny URL that you will see that will be able to capture this. But what are the options? And by the way, these are AI generated images as well. Embrace or bury your head in the sand. The schools were banning this. What do you think is going to happen if you have the state of New York or city of Baltimore or Seattle saying you can't use ChatGPT on your Chromebook? Well, the folks, the haves, are going to go home and say, Mom, Dad, can I borrow your computer? I got to do some homework. I can't access it from my computer. And once they ask why, they'll say, go ahead, have a good time. The folks that don't have a parent or internet access at home and are stuck on their Chromebooks are not going to be ready when they graduate high school or graduate college to use these tools. And we'll see in a minute, 98% of employers are saying, we have entry-level jobs that are requiring this thing. We expect the knowledge that you're going to have available to you. So the tiny URL that's being posted, please take a look and please access that accordingly. And we'll continue.
Oh, Scott, we got another question.
Go for it.
The question is, since ChatGPT 4 is only $20 a month, how is KPMG and PwC spending billions? How are they incorporating AI into their tax practice, for instance?
Great question. As far as why would a company need to invest money if they can pay $20 a month and have everything? Well, the short answer is they can't. What they're going to have, they will have their own large language models, their own platforms, but they want to integrate it into their tools. So the tools they have their audit software, they have their tax software, they're going to be putting it in. TurboTax is going to be putting it into their software. Accessing and integrating that tool with their data and making it reliable, that's where the billions are coming in. That's where the money's being spent. Training their staff on how to use it effectively. Because their clients are going to be using it and saying, hey, I just did this, and it might be wrong. So when, as an auditor, when I was a Big 8 auditor, I went out and I validated. I'd look at the computer printout, yay high. I'd have to do a 10 key on and see if the computer can add. We're beyond that right now, but we're going in and saying, well, it may not be accurate. It may make up book names. It may make up titles. It may make up URLs. It may make up YouTube video resources. It makes up all kinds of things. It hallucinates. You might have heard that once or twice, and it does.
And part of OpenAI's business model is they license the technology. And so, for example, Bloomberg, they license ChatGPT for Bloomberg GPT. So you have access to Bloomberg data. So they have their own private data set, and it uses GPT. You can search using GPT into the Bloomberg data. So they license the GPT technology.
And by the way, you should now be able to see in the Q&A at the top of your screens the tiny URL link, ChatGPT or Stratford ChatGPT, that will take you to this presentation. There's a lot of appendices here, a lot of links to videos, other resources, other tools, as we'll get to. So just to make sure you're aware that you can see it. You saw this slide before. I mentioned Samsung, Amazon, Goldman Sachs, BOA, JP Morgan. Banks don't want to be held liable. They can get sued if they use the data. I also read a headline somewhere that you might be able to be sued if your doctor doesn't use AI. And I kind of disagree with that too. Like, doctor's best judgment. But I'll tell you, an AI can probably read an X-ray or a CAT scan or an MRI much better than most doctors and catch things that they won't catch. So those are tools in there. Countries banned in Russia, China, North Korea, Cuba, Iran, Syria. Those are places that have banned the use for the populace. I guarantee you, for nefarious purposes, they're not banning it internally. The military is using it. All kinds of folks are using it, but their populations are banned from using it. So be aware, be careful. Genie's out of the bottle. There's no 6-month pause. Can't hit the pause button. We're active. We're moving forward. We're moving onward. Let's talk a little bit about the HR space. AI is not going to take your job, but someone who knows how to use it just might. If you are a professional, you're a tax professional, you're an accountant, it'll 10x what you can do, 10 times benefit, because you'll know when it's hallucinating. You'll know when it veers off course. You'll know to interpret. Your clients may not, by the way. But the other side, if you're an amateur, a novice, or you don't know much about things and you ask questions, you will trust it. You'll say, okay, that's the gospel. That must be right. And it sounds so convincing. That's what I worry about with most of my students. That exam that was a 46%, 5 out of 6 of the first questions I asked, it got right. 6 out of 7, it got wrong, the next 6 out of 7. When I got all this right, I said, damn it, I'm not going to be able to do a take-home exam ever again. And I was even more worried when I saw it got so many wrong. My students are going to trust this thing, and they're going to screw up. So I need to teach critical thinking and analysis in the classroom and to anybody I speak with that it can be wrong. So be aware. Projections, PricewaterhouseCoopers. They came in and said, hey, we've got a lot of industries that are going to gain jobs, look at healthcare, and lose jobs, look at manufacturing. Those are the predictions for the future, some of the directions. This was a scary thought. 9 in 10 hiring managers, 1,000 surveyed, say ChatGPT experience can be more valuable than a college degree. Now, I guarantee you, on this call, there were a whole bunch of people that were at level 1, can spell GPT, or level 2, who never used it. I guarantee you. But they're saying it's more valuable than a college degree. How the heck do you ask a prompt an intelligent question? How do you accessing the information you want to access without having a base of knowledge? This is a scary attitude, but I don't think it's factual, even though it was surveyed by people who feel that's true. We go a little bit further. Projections. This will be the last I talk about on the front of HR. World Economic Forum. A couple of years back in 2020, they said 85 million jobs will be eliminated due to AI and 97 will be created. That's if you don't have to be a CPA or a tax professional to say that's a 12 million gain. I got a lot more jobs. Just earlier this year in May, same group, World Economic Forum said 83 million jobs eliminated. Okay, so they cut that down a little bit, but only 69 million will be created. That sounds like a net loss to you and me, doesn't it? They don't know. I don't know. We don't know. But I will say, yes, many jobs will be eliminated and many jobs will be created. I guarantee it. Which jobs? That's going to be a function of, yep, the marketplace and what the needs are. It's going to clear up and make life a lot easier in a lot of places. I'll give you one example of McDonald's down in Texas. Are jobs being eliminated when you have a McDonald's that will actually make the burgers, the buns, take the order, artificial intelligence with a chatbot interaction, and push your order out to you at the drive-through window to get your lunch order? Yeah, they have some people in the back room loading burgers and buns somewhere in the inside of the building, but not the 8 or 10 people they have running at McDonald's. They have one or two. Is that replacing fast food jobs? Well, last I heard, there was a shortage of fast food workers. And you know what? The $20 or $30 an hour fast food worker, frankly, I don't want to pay 18 or 20 bucks for a Big Mac. That's a different story. But you get the idea that you look at that and say, wait a minute, is that replacing jobs? Well, if there's a shortage of workers, it's not really replacing jobs, it's enhancing the services provided. So there are different skill sets. My concern is the timing. I think in the short term, a lot of jobs are going to get eliminated. In the long term, a lot of those jobs will be recovered with different skills if we can ante up and develop our skill sets to meet the needs of the future. But it's changing life as we know it, capitalism as we know it, accounting as we know it. It's changing business as we know it. So this is going to be an amazing tool and is an amazing tool, but change is hard, and that's where we're headed with it. So we talked about investments. A lot of companies are putting big bucks into it. And the majors right here, from Oracle, Big Four, Salesforce, up to the guys that already have their platforms. Why are they putting 30 billion into a platform or 200 billion as IBM is? Well, they need to. And they're spending it in all kinds of places. Care to talk about some of the other articles that show things? We actually talked about some of these.
Yeah, we worked on a paper with 328 accounting professors across the country, across the U.S. We gave chatgpt our exams, and from various areas, so from AIS, auditing, financial accounting, managerial accounting, and we wanted to see how chatgpt would compare to our students. And at this time, when we actually started the research, this was a little bit after the release of 3.5, if I'm not mistaken, and the students performed better than ChatGPT 3.5. So you can see students on average 7.
What is that again? 46% that we scored, the 46% we scored, our students had an 83% average on our test. And this was consistent, 46.5 and 77. So.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, we had to give a disclaimer in the paper that while we were writing the paper, the software updated. So when you think about, when we're talking about how things are changing, while we were working on this, they updated the software. I think it was 4.0 came out, and it was outdated, but it was very interesting. So it was based on 3.5, but it was outdated. There was another paper, or there was other research done on the CPA exam. So using the 3.5, the average was 50.9, but with ChatGPT 4, it scored at 84%. However, we've got the line in there, advanced prompting. And that means that it was given examples of the questions, and I call it helping it along a little bit to answer the questions, but without the advanced prompting, it would not have been able to. It didn't fare as well. It didn't fare as well. But here's a look at how it's performed on other exams. So the bar exam, the GRE.
Enhanced from 2.5 to 4.
Well,
Big difference.
yeah, it is a big difference between the two. And again, this is the 4.0 version. Who's to say what the 4.0 updated July 20th version would perform? So when you think about it, we've got the 4.0, which came out in March, but they've done updates on that as well with a focus on precision. So it may even be more improved. But I think the key thing with this is to see what a large jump you have from the 3.5 to the 4.0 to the current version that we have right now. And that's not to say with the plugins, because with certain exams, and you can also add in plugins and to test it. So that's not to say how it would perform with the other enhancements with the plugins.
So let's talk a little bit about prompt engineering. Egyptian Nobel laureate. Okay, you can tell whether a man is clever by his answers. You can tell whether a man is wise by his questions. This is why that 90% saying it's more important to have experience with ChatGPT than a college education. If you don't have the college education, you don't know what questions effectively to ask often. So it does teach you to think. It does teach you to do things. So let's talk about a little bit of a cartoon here, and you can read that on your own. But somebody interviewing for a job has all these buzzwords, and then when they kind of came to the end and said, "How about prompt engineer? When can you start?" So all these other ones, we don't want buzzwords, but there's a kind of a dearth of or lack of availability when it comes to prompt engineering and thinking how to process and how to ask those questions. We're not going to go into, we have a full course in design that talks about that. But as far as prompting goes, we are having a prompt summary screen here, and again, you can read it on your own. But more is better. You want to structure your queries. You want to ask questions. You want to use the tools. And there are a couple of methodologies that we've created and worked in to do that. And prompting tips, I'm not going to go through these on screen. I want to get to some hands-on and demonstration of what you can use this for tax purposes. But I do want to highlight as we go in, there's some resources available to you. You can come back to this. It's an hour and a half seminar by itself. But there are two methodologies that we've developed. One I call the Dr. Scott D method, and one's the R*C method or Rockstar method, if you're a Nickelback fan. The Dr. Scott Dell, you define, okay, what's your objective? What you create a role? You're a web designer, you're an expert, a psychologist, an accounting guru. You specify the output, you clarify, show samples of that output, set the tone. One of my favorites is the tone of Dr. Seuss, or you can set the tone, explain it like you would to a first grader or a college student or a practitioner. And then set this target. What's the audience you want it to go to? And then you can have a dialogue. You can go back and forth. The dialogue is that conversation benefits. If we go over to the R** method, a lot of interviewing folks would recognize situation, task, action, result. That's a behavioral question answer format. Revised to R*-C. So you create a role. Who are you? What's your background? What's your knowledge? 20 years of experience in accounting as a tax practitioner, as a professional. And then any optional constraints on the end of that. So that's just an insight to a structure, which we can go into a lot more depth if anybody has the inclination. I'm going to go ahead and hand off the tax research side to Mfon. Take it away, and you can do a deeper dive.
Yes. So when you think about tax research and using ChatGPT, I think it can really enhance the work, and it's amazing. It's amazing what you can do with ChatGPT. So you can, let me go back here. You can create a draft of tax advice or correspondence, and that's something that we're going to demonstrate in a few minutes as well. You can analyze large data sets, so you can upload data sets and have it to analyze those data sets for you. So some of the things, it can help you to eliminate routine tasks. It gives you the ability to learn and improve continuously. You can also use applications or plugins to help you in the field, and we'll look at that as well. It puts you in the forefront of the field. So as we mentioned before, this isn't going anywhere. It is here to stay, and it'll help you to stay ahead of others who are also in the field and who may not be as well versed in the technology. So you can use this with Excel macros. You can use it to summarize IRS publications. That's one of the demonstrations that we're going to do right now. The tools can be customized based on your needs. That ties into using the platform. So using ChatGPT, becoming familiar with how it works, and you can tie it into your workflow. I think that's very important because when you think about it, you have the technology, you have a lot of options with it, but there's certain things you may want to use it for, or you may feel comfortable using it for. So I think that's very important to, number one, become familiar with it, and then build up your skill set with using the technology. And then the more that you use it, the more you can understand what the capabilities are. So number one, there are features in ChatGPT to protect data. And that is just like Scott was mentioning, when you upload to ChatGPT and you have to be mindful of what you're uploading because it does become part of the public domain. And you should have a understanding of, number one, the data storage settings with ChatGPT, who owns the data. I think that's very important when you're using it, especially if you're thinking of using client data or information. Okay, well, we have this link here. The top link is if you use this link, this will take you to the chat that I have in ChatGPT. But I'm going to share my screen and kind of walk through a scenario. I think I'm going to do that now to give you an idea. Really, you says the future of the tax practice. The future is now. So what I'm about to do and what I'm about to show you is available right now. And one thing to think about is what you can do now is only going to become better. It's only going to improve as time moves on, and it's going to become more widely adopted. More widely adopted.
And if I may interject,
go ahead.
If I might also say, your clients are using it, and actually you might want to encourage them so they come to you informed. They can ask you better questions, but they may be careful about having them trust the data and make sure that you're still the expert when they come to you that can answer the questions as well as resolve things that may not be quite correct, because they may come to you, ChatGPT said so. There was a lawyer who got fired in Texas because he used ChatGPT or GPT-4 and the cases were made up. The judge looked at those. These cases don't even exist. Get out of my courtroom. He got fired. There was an academic who flunked half of his senior class. They wouldn't graduate because why? He asked ChatGPT, "Did you write this?" And ChatGPT said, "Oh, of course I did." And that wasn't the case. It lied. But half his class didn't graduate because he assumed that I can ask the source and see if you wrote this. And it obviously didn't know what it was talking about at the time. So be aware. By the way, I did just post a link to a newsletter that's available to you. And that link will give you an idea of being able to access some of the chats that it's in the career space called the Career Capsule newsletter on LinkedIn. Also going to send to you additional links for some additional information, and we'll put our LinkedIn addresses in the chat as well as in the Q&A and posting on your screen. So enjoy. If there are any questions, feel free.
I think I'm going to jump into the share screen. We've got actually a question about how the APIs work. So I think I'm going to jump in here.
Cool.
So I have plugins already loaded. So right now you're looking at the ChatGPT 4 interface. If you take a look at the very top, you'll see that there's plugins enabled. And actually, I think I'm going to do another, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm just going to do a totally fresh window.
Yeah, can
and
you
I'm
show
going to
where
do
you
this
select
by,
the plugins? Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to show them from scratch.
Yeah, you can have up to 3
Mm-hmm.
plugins simultaneously on a query.
Okay, so when you go in here, you're looking at the interface for ChatGPT Plus, which is the paid version. As you mentioned before, it's $20 a month. You have access to the 3.5, but also to the 4.0. When you hover over the 4.0, if you notice at the very bottom, you have an option for plugins. If you go to you click on the drop down for the plugins, it gives you options for various plugins. You can choose 3. I'm going to use this Ask Your PDF plugin. There's a plugin store. So if you remember where I mentioned, I say it's akin to an app store. There's about 500 plugins that you can choose from through the plugin store. I think one question was about Expedia. If you can see, there's an Expedia plugin. There's a Kayak plugin where you can search and book flights. A popular plugin is Ask Your PDF, which I'm about to use, where you can upload documents into ChatGPT, and then you can have it to summarize or answer questions from those documents. And you can also produce other content from those documents as well. So right now, we've got 3 plugins in ChatGPT functioning. One of them is Ask Your PDF. And I'll show you how this works. Give me one sec. I'm going to bounce between tabs as fast as I can. So if you go to, I'm going to load up actually, I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to load up a document. So the Rev Proc from 2022, it's a PDF. I'm going to load this up I'm going to download it to my computer and then upload it to ChatGPT. So I just wanted to show you what document I'm going to use to give you an idea of what you can do.
If you're using 3.5, you can actually cut and paste the document. You don't have access to the APIs with 3.5 or ChatGPT, but you can cut and paste a document. You can cut and paste from a URL, from a website, from a Word doc, from a PDF document, Google Doc. You can copy it, paste it in directly to GPT-3.5 or GPT-4. There may be some capacity limitations. You can't put a 100-page document in there, but you don't need to use the URL and the API. If you really still want to copy the document, you have access and abilities to do that sometimes. And actually, we're also going to be posting LinkedIn addresses for MFON and myself. You'll see that on your screen, and at the bottom in the Q&A, you're welcome to connect with us, reach out. Love to chat further. If you have any questions, you're welcome to use us as a resource. We give a warranty on our presentations, so feel free to outreach and give us a chat. All yours.
Yeah, so I've uploaded the document, and I've uploaded the document. I've put in the document ID. I've asked ChatGPT to summarize the document. And if you see this gray box, this lets you know that ChatGPT is going to that particular plugin, Ask Your PDF. It's going to the IRS document that I uploaded to do the summary. So, and it gives me a summary. So I've got what, 1, 2, 3 points. And it lets you know. So it tells you, okay, this is a high level summary and the document contains more detailed information. If you need information on a specific topic, feel free to ask. So right now, that document is in my chat with ChatGPT. It's about a 60-page document. Now I can ask ChatGPT questions on that particular document, or I can ask it to do particular tasks based on that document that I've uploaded into this particular chat. And the great thing about this, to emphasize when we talk about speed, this just took, well, it took maybe about a minute or two for me to upload the document, but for the output, for it to read the document and to give me output, it took seconds. It wasn't very long for it to do that. So this is one of the things that you can do with ChatGPT. I also want to show you, I'm going to stop sharing for a second, a scenario. I've already written a prompt to share with you as well. I think, let me go in here, sorry. I think we've got some questions in there, Scott, so I don't know.
I'll take a look.
Yeah. So let's see here. All right. So I'm going in here. All right, so this is an example of a prompt. And you've heard us mention prompting over and over again. So in this prompt, I am telling ChatGPT, I'm giving it a role. So in this case, I'm telling ChatGPT, you're an experienced tax accountant. You've been working with individuals for over 20 years. You have a great rapport with your clients. You've completed the return of a client, and that client owes $20,000 in taxes. Give an example of what you would say to a client over the phone and in an email. The client is a 35-year-old male. He works as a business analyst. So this is an example of prompting. So I've given ChatGPT a role, which should give me better output. Now, right now, it's going for the phone conversation. It should give us a sample for a email conversation as well. So within seconds, I have a draft of a script for a phone conversation. And it gives you, based on the information provided. So it gives you a script for a phone conversation, and it also gives you a script for an email that you would send to a client. Not to say that you would use this, however, this could be something for you to, if you're looking to draft something, a document, you could use this to get started. Or if you have, let's say, a junior employee, they can practice interaction. So you can give ChatGPT certain scenarios and it would give output and they can practice interacting as if it were a client. As if it were a client. Were there any questions, Scott, when I went in there?
Yeah, I'm actually answering some questions directly, but there was a request before. Could you demonstrate what just do a query and show what a 3.5 response would look like and what a 4.0 response would look like from the same query? Can you generate those two just to give it an indication of speed and kind of what a query looks like when you start from scratch?
Okay, hold on, let's see.
And if there's anybody that has a specific query that they want to put in the chat, we can do that as well, in the Q&A rather.
So it's 3.5. This is how fast 3.5 works.
Crazy fast. Spits it right out.
So I think when we were talking about the speed of the output, I mean 4.0 was not bad. 3.5, as you can see, it just gave us content a lot quicker. But in this case, it's really giving a script. And if you notice, I gave it the same prompt, and it says over the phone, it's telling you what to say. So the output is different. So it's giving you, and then it's pretending that it's the client, right? And then it's giving you what you would say. So it's generating a script, a conversation, and pretending to be the client in this case, for the phone conversation. And then it gives you the email.
It's also quite polite. There was a question about that in the chat saying, is recommended that each person in a firm have their own account, or is there a problem sharing the same log so we can share the search lists together? And the short answer, and the answer to every question in my class, is 2 words: it depends. There's a limitation for every 3 hours, you can have no more than 25 4.0 queries. And you can see very quickly you could use that up. If you start having a series of queries, and then it'll default, you go back to 3.5, you're pretty unlimited with 3.5, even if you're paying. So and you also can remember the queries. Well, if you have a client situation and you've got 5 professional staff or 2 partners and managers and whatever, if you have your own queries that you had, I just talked about a client and here's what we're talking about, you can go back to that. If you have a common access data set and other people, now multiple people can chime in at the same time, actually under the same name, but now you lose the ability to do some of that analysis, to do some of that historical remembering and some other things. Any other thoughts, Mfon? Because it was a long answer, so I didn't want to just do a type and answer to that question. So.
Well, yeah, then you're sharing the chat history, and in some of the conversations, So for example, I may have one style of of prompting that I use that may be different than Scott's, or I may want a certain type of output versus Scott's. So then you have it kind of meshes the I say the style or the and the input together. So it go ahead.
Yeah, and there are two new features that literally within the past 2 weeks came out. One is a personality feature. So you can say, here's my experience, here's how I like to answer things, here's my background, and it will answer from your perspective when you generate answers. And the other is the ability to customize other things you want in a format for output. So there's any customizations that you might have it firm wide, but again, having your own account has its advantages and how much you're going to play with it and experiment with it and do some of these things with it. And it has a memory,
And with
and you can recycle that.
And with the plugins, you can use 3 plugins at once. So I may want to use one set of combination of plugins. Scott may want to use another set of plugins. So you'd have to make adjustments there as well. Then there may be some plugins that I prefer to use for certain tasks. And let's say Scott or another, let's say employee would prefer a different set. So you can run into those situations as well.
I'm going to scan through a couple of screens of different prompts and things that you can be doing, audit, accounting, access. But I want to give a byline to Microsoft Office Copilot 365. This is going to generate PowerPoint slides. This is going to generate, I mentioned, you don't have to do pivot tables anymore and program them. You can ask questions and ask it to do analysis on a spreadsheet. You can have it generate Outlook, your email saying, I just had this meeting, summarize this. I have the transcript from it, summarize it and send it out. And it will draft the email, have a Word document, have communications, have any type of company documentation, personnel documentation, client communications. Copilot is going to be pretty amazing. And then advantages for Excel. There's all kinds of Excel tools built into that and access. Now we have a bunch of resources here, a bunch of YouTube videos, a bunch of blogs and articles that are all part of this. And we even have at the end, we have acronyms of interest. So a lot of the abbreviations that go with this. We also have terms of interest that go with this. We have access to a variety of other links and tools made accessible to you. So all of these, don't need to review them obviously, but they're obviously available to you. And the last 2 slides I will share with you is the one that has a bunch of other AI tools relating to art, music. It can generate copyright-free music, no intellectual property violations. Art, pictures, no violations. Give me something in the style of Miro, impressionistic, in the style of a photograph. Other AI tools. So again, these are all part of what you can see and have access to. But at this point, if there are any other thoughts, Mfon, and we can open up to questions and comments and get feedback from folks that want some other answers. Anything coming up in the chat?
Oh, there's a question about how much is Copilot 365 to be installed, and is it by license?
Yeah, I think you have to own the license to Office 365, but at this point, my understanding is it's no charge additional for it. So I think it's a tool that will be accessible, and they want to enhance the tool, but you do have to subscribe. Google's doing the same thing, by the way. So if you're a Google Doc platform or a Google platform, in their docs, in their slides, they are also integrating these AI tools into what they have. I mentioned earlier, Google Chrome has it in beta as well. So it can do analysis, it can do things. Again, be careful of hallucinations. Not to remind you, but let me remind you. Good questions. Other thoughts or comments?
Yeah, and one thing is with this coming, so when you think about Copilot being part of the Office suite, and you think about Google having their own version, I think it's important now to at least lower the learning curve because you'll have this software embedded in these platforms. And if you're using ChatGPT and you're familiar with ChatGPT now, you won't have a steep of a learning curve transitioning into using Copilot and other similar software.
Cool. Looks like we have time for another one or two questions, and then we'll pass it back to the powers that be. But while you're doing that, if in the chat or in the Q&A, if you could rate this seminar on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 meaning, you know what, I knew all this stuff. Don't I? You know what, I could have done. I could have actually serviced a client and made some money. Up to 5, cool stuff, interesting, loved it. So any feedback you have, please do in the Q&A. Would appreciate your feedback and get an idea of what your thoughts are, how you enjoyed it, what you liked, didn't like, whatever else, any additional comments. So I'm seeing 5s, 4s, 3, 5s, thank you, 4, 5, cool. So it sounds like there was some benefit here. Appreciate the feedback on that and glad that you found benefit as well. Glad to have you and look forward to future interactions.
Yeah.
Now again, LinkedIn URLs for MFON and mine and I have been posted. We welcome the opportunity to connect with you. And if you have other questions or other discussions, other curiosities on how to best use these tools, we're happy to share insights and work with you. And as I say, the newsletters have been posted and anything else. And I'm not seeing any other questions present. Last question. There was a Copilot question.
I was going to say, if you need any help, have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Please do. That's why we're here. You can tell we love this stuff. We have a good time with it. We love sharing insights and information about it. And hopefully you found benefit as well, which most of you are saying, cool. Yep, sounds like you did. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate the opportunity to be of service. I'm going to hand back the microphone to Catherine, and she will fill you in on the final questions and CPE considerations and all the other stuff, good stuff that goes with that. So appreciate your time and your commitment. We'll look forward to future interactions.
Thank you so much.
Click the link that is now displayed on your screen to complete the certification process. Tell us how we did. Please click the certification prompt that is now on your screen to complete the survey and request your certificate. Thank you.
I'm not seeing it on my screen. In the Q&A, if you are seeing it, by all means, you may see it and we don't. That's okay.
No, I don't see it.
No, I'm not seeing it either. If that's the worst thing that happens, we're okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you have enjoyed our national webinar, Utilizing Chat, GPT, and AI in Tax Practices, Automating Repetitious Tasks, Tax Research, Training New Staff. If your question was not answered, you may email it directly to our presenters. Their email addresses are included in the presentation materials. Again, for those of you seeking standard tax or accounting continuing education credit, you will need to respond to all the pop-up prompts. Today's participants can order a recorded version of this event at a special attendee's price. Please call customer service at 800-926-7926 or visit Stratford's website at www.stratfordpub.com. If you are not yet a Stratford Annual Pass holder, try the CPE Individual Annual Pass. You can get all your CPE credits for one low price. Simply respond to the email you will receive after the program. Again, thank you for joining us. Panelists, please stand by. Listeners, to close your browser and end the lecture, simply close the browser. Thank you. Have a great day.